Good day and welcome to what I think will be the last installment of the Cattaraugus County Health Department Performance Evaluation System training. Today we're going to look at the administrative interface that allow us to update reference data. So as always, we're going to access the system through this workbook, CCHD Performance Evaluation System. And as always, the pop-up screen comes up. Just a um, quick reflection on the last training video. If you recall, when we created a multi-year employee satisfaction trends workbook, and it didn't seem to work correctly. I went back and looked at that, and long story short, it actually did work correctly. However, for whatever reason, Excel doesn't, you kind of got to zoom out and then zoom back in. And here, I'm going to show it to you. So we're gonna open a multi-year employee survey trend workbook. So this was the one we created, if you recall. So there it is. Let me get this out of the way so you can see it. And I'll minimize this also. So I went through and tried it again, and sure enough, it worked fine. Okay, so we're going to look at yearly trends and see I'm zoomed out here at 25%. And once I zoomed out at 25%, it then, for whatever reason, don't ask me why, you were able to view all the different graphs. And you can see there's, chart 42. There's 42 of these things. I said 43. There's actually 42. But if I actually wanted to see that chart a little bit closer, I was simply going to view 100%. And there you can see it, right? And you'll also see that it's there for all the different programs. And if you recall from the last video, we weren't seeing them. Again, it has something to do with Excel not necessarily visually seeing these things if they're there unless you zoom out first. Don't ask me why. And again, here's the category summaries, and here you'll see if I zoom into 100%. This is chart 13, and so if you recall from the employee satisfaction survey, there are 13 categories. Okay, and here's here they are for each division. So I just wanted to show you that the program was working fine. It's just this sort of strange behavior of Excel that requires you to zoom out to 25% and find it and zoom in. Don't know why. It is what it is. All right, so I'm just going to close this up. And we are going to continue on to look at the administrative interface. Okay, and again, as always, this splash screen pops up on the other screen. So I moved it over here. All right, so let's access reference data workbook. Okay, this is in red. The normal person, even a manager, shouldn't necessarily be hitting this button. Okay, this allows you to update reference data. And if you recall from the first video, there's a workbook called PES References. We're going to open it here. And in there is all the reference data that this application uses. And there may be times when that needs to change. And so this interface that's going to pop up here will allow you to do that. But only certain people should be changing reference data. Don't know who those will be yet, but it should just be a small handful of folks. So we're going to hit open reference data, and you're going to say, uh-oh, we need an administrative password. All right, everybody close your eyes right now, although I will likely change this password. Keep them closed. And now we enter that password, and now we see the administrative interface. And you can see, you should be reading this here. Welcome to the PS reference workbook. You can see the PS references workbook up here. Again, you are never going to access this workbook directly through File Explorer. Always do it through that previous interface that popped up. All right, let's go through this and see if we can get through it quickly. The first thing is you may want to look at a civil service job description. Okay, so I had one of our public health fellows go through, get all our civil service job descriptions, format them, make them look decent, and put them all here. This is good reference information, right? We're going to pick the senior accountant, open it up, and here's the civil service job description for the senior accountant, okay? It's there. If it needs to get updated, you could update it here and simply save it, right? That would be fine. Anyway, that's just a simple function. You may need to add a new civil service title. Okay, I don't know how many civil service titles there are that the department utilizes. They're listed here. My guess is 30 some odd titles. But there might be another one. Okay, this isn't going to happen often, but occasionally it'll happen. And you'll need to add one. And so we're going to say this is the one I always use for test purposes, lifeguard. Right? I don't think we'll probably never have a lifeguard in the health department, but it's interesting to use for test purposes. So enter the new civil service title below and create civil service title reference data. So there are technical competencies associated with a lifeguard. There are public health competencies, licensure, training, external training, internal training. You got to know what all these things are, right? In the first video, I pointed you to the workforce development training video I put together. If you don't know what these are, you may want to look at them. So when we click this button, it'll allow us to do that. So we're going to create the civil service title. Okay, so now you would read this, and it says, enter up to 7 technical competencies in cells. We're going to just move this until I click OK. We're going to enter 7 technical competencies in cells A4 to A10. We're going to enter the corresponding performance standards in these cells. We're going to enter public health competencies in A12 through A18. And the performance standards for those competencies. We're going to enter 6 licensure training requirements in the other cells. We're going to enter. So, it tells you what you need to do here. Okay. Now, do you have to enter 7? No, it says up to 7. It says up to 7, up to 6, up to 7. Okay, so you don't have to necessarily fill everything in, right? All right, we're going to say okay. We are going to move this out of the way for a second. All right, and here you go. This is a tab. So what ended up happening is a tab or a worksheet got created in the PS references file, right? And you have all the things you need to fill in, okay? So, you got technical competency 1. You can imagine, having 7 of them. You have public health competency 1. Again, you could have 7. You have yearly review for your licensure training requirement. A lifeguard might actually have an annual thing they need to do. Um, Similarly, there might be some external training requirement and some internal training requirement. Now, if you recall from video 2, when we choose a position for an employee, all of these things here are automatically populated. So if you recall, we went through part 1 of the initial performance review spreadsheet or the workbook, and we chose a position, and all of these things popped up, right? And where they popped up from, and we'll look at that in a minute, is from a sheet in the PES references workbook. Okay, and if you recall, they also had associated performance standards. Okay, here they all are. There is something in here called frequency. Okay, I haven't utilized this. This actually doesn't do anything right now. That's interesting. It has a drop down. Doesn't really matter. They don't do anything. And they're not used by the program. I did have some thoughts. You don't have to put anything in here. I did have some thoughts about how I might utilize those. I think it's going to be a little too complicated, and I'm not sure it's worth doing. So right now, nothing needs to be entered in the frequency box, so don't worry about that. Okay, and you can see everything's color coded just to make it easy. The codes don't mean anything. It's just, so you can see each section. All right, so great. We created a new position and we added the requirements for that position. Excellent. Let me bring this little guy back over. Okay. We're going to go back to the Welcome tab and see when I click that, the Lifeguard tab got hidden. Everything is hidden. Okay. Just because I don't really want folks screwing around, I want you to use this interface. That's going to make sure things are done properly. Okay. All right. So you'll see here that once I created that lifeguard position, it actually shows up here on the bottom. Okay. So it automatically updated. I know it's not in alphabetical order. I didn't, although everything else is. I didn't worry about that. I can't imagine we're going to be adding a lot of civil service positions. But if we do, we can do that. So remember I mentioned that all your competencies in your training requirements, they are position-based competencies and position-based training requirements. They auto-populate. I just mentioned that. You may need to adjust those on occasion. Okay. So let's say you wanted to do this. All of these work basically the same. I'll show you the first one, and I'll very quickly then show you the other ones. But they all work the same. Okay, so we're going to go to Keyboard Specialist 2. We're going to update their technical competencies. And it says, okay, update the technical competencies in cells A4 to A10 as desired. As necessary, update the corresponding performance standards in D4 to D10. Excellent. Gives you a little instruction there. We'll move this out of the way. You can see that it automatically selects the first cell that represents a technical competency. So here are the technical competencies associated with a keyboard specialist. And here are the associated performance standards. Okay. Now, listen, we actually made a first attempt at what the technical competencies might be. We went through the civil service job descriptions, and based on those job descriptions, we pulled out what we thought the technical competencies would be. We're not the experts. Okay, this was done by myself and a couple other folks. I don't know if that's what the managers want as a technical competency. Um, but they did come from the job descriptions. They seem to be technical competencies, so there they are. Okay. And you would go ahead and change these and modify them as necessary. You would go ahead and change the performance standards here, right? Let's just, for this last one, since it's just a placeholder one, we'll just say, you know, placeholder. Okay. And you would go ahead and change it, and you could change the performance standard, aware. Um, and there you go. Now, honestly, if you wanted to, you could go ahead and change all these other things right here, right now. Okay, you could change the public health competencies, the licensure training requirements. You could do that now. All right, there's nothing stopping you from doing that. But I have decided that I would rather you go through, and again, we're going to go back and click on the welcome tab. Okay, I would rather you go through here simply to kind of structure things a little better. So, what did we hit? We had keyboard specialist. You could do it for any civil service position. We'll do it for keyboard specialist again. So now we're going to modify the public health competency. So we're going to update public health competencies. I must have picked keyboard specialist too, and you can see it takes you to the first public health competency. Okay, and then you would modify them just like we showed you last time. Um, and you change the licensure training requirements. And this time we're going to choose keyboard specialist 2. I actually think that was the one we made changes on. Move this out of the way. Yeah, this was the one we made changes on. You can see that change there. But again, it selects the first cell for the licensure training requirement, and you would make those changes here. So essentially, they all work the same. These 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 functions all work the same. They just take you to a different tab, different worksheet, and take you to a different cell. So you can see this one is going to select the first position external training requirement, and it does that. See right here, it selects that one, and we're on the community health nurse tab, right? We're going to go back to the welcome tab, and we'll go to the child find assistant. You can see the tab changes, and it takes you to the first internal training requirement. And you see it does that here. Okay, so pretty simple functionality, not much to it. Those 5 all work the same. It is what it is, right? They're easy to do. Let's go back to the welcome tab. What do we want to do next? Okay. Remember the employee satisfaction survey that we've looked at in previous videos? Okay. So what happens is that survey actually gets copied from this reference workbook. So this reference workbook are where those questions are stored. So we can view and update the employee satisfaction survey questions here. So we're going to click that button. And we're going to read it. You may change and modify the employee satisfaction survey questions here. However, this will affect trend data starting on the date the changes were made. Trend data will not be comparable after that date. So that kind of makes sense. This here, staff survey in the PS references book, this is what gets copied. And when you hit that button on an employee performance review this is what gets copied. Okay. If you wanted to change those questions, you could. You could do those right here. Okay. You could change this survey. Um, let's say for whatever reason you didn't want to include all these questions. You could, I don't know, you could change question 37 to do not answer, right? And, leave it blank. You would want to know the date that you did that on, though, right? Because remember, when we generate our annual employee satisfaction summaries and our multi-year trend graphs, um, it's pulling off of this stuff. And so if you're changing this, the data is not going to be comparable. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it a little bit, probably best to, if you are going to change these questions, probably best to contact somebody with a little bit a little bit of expertise in this software. Probably a couple of changes that need to be made to some of the workbooks. If you recall, there were objectives based on these things, and there were some naming conventions for the charts. Um, Probably best that get looked at. Um, Also, with this, let's say for some reason you wanted to add another 40 questions. All right, if you're going to do something like that, or frankly, if you're going to add one more question, um, you're going to want to talk to somebody because I believe the program code is going to need to be updated. They're not huge updates, but you would have to change some of the code in the different workbooks. All right, but you could change the language here, what have you. Okay, I think it would be easy enough to make some of these questions blank. I think that would be easy. Um, anyway, that's where you update the staff survey. Okay. All right. What do we got here? All right. View or change passwords. All right. So this is not the master administrative password, which I entered at the beginning of this video. These are staff passwords and manager passwords. Okay. So let's look at those. All right, it gives you a little thing here. Employee names are stored in column A. Employee divisions are stored in column B. Employee passwords are stored in column C. Divisional passwords in column D. Columns A through D are hidden. Please do not hide unless absolutely necessary. Manage passwords through the tools provided. Okay. As soon as you start dealing with the raw data, people can, you can have a slip of the mouse, things can happen. Okay, so I'd rather you not deal with the raw data. I'd rather you work through these tools. Okay, so here's a tool to change management passwords. Select the division or program. We're going to select environmental health, and the new password for environmental health is ENV Health 1. Okay, click to change the management password for environmental health. Click to change okay. Boom. Okay, was successful. One update was made. Okay, so why does it say one update was made? Well, there are many employees in environmental health. Okay, and I'll be honest with you. This is all just test data, and I'll show you this in a minute. Um, if we open up and we do look at the columns, you'll see that there's only one environmental health employee. Therefore, only one update was made. I'll show you that in a minute. But let's say all 13 environmental health employees, or how many there are, were here, and they all had passwords, individual employee passwords, it would say 13 updates were made to the management password. Okay, and you'll see that in a second. All right, notice it, lets you go. Excuse me 1 second. I want to get my dog away from the window. Odie, come lay down, pup. I don't need you looking outside and barking right now. Okay. So let's say we didn't necessarily want to change it, but the environmental health manager forgot the password. So we can go here and we can say, all right, just look it up. Click to look up management password. Management password for Environmental Health Division program is ENV1. Yay! Okay, so there you go. There's the password. Forget about the exclamation point at the end. That's just part of the text. Okay. Now you wanted to change staff passwords. Okay. So all we got here is Chris Crawford and Jane Doe. You remember maybe Jane Doe from some of the other um, videos, right? Let's choose Chris Crawford, who is me. And it is possible that an employee could work in two different programs, right? Maybe they got transferred from one program to the other, and so they may have different programs. In my case, because I was fiddling around, right, and doing testing, there's actually a Chris Crawford in every program. So we're going to change my password for the finance program. And we're going to call this, we're going to give my new password finance 1, right? And I'll show you the raw data here in a second. So we're going to change that staff password. Again, it's actually no record found for Chris Crawford working in the finance division program. No password to change. So I guess I didn't create a Chris Crawford working in the finance program. That's good, I guess. Let's pick one that I did create a Chris Crawford for. I'm sure I created one for environmental health. We'll see. Maybe I didn't. We'll click to change that staff password. It was updated. Okay, so it'll be my password. And we'll show you that update in a second. One update made. Excellent. And let's say we want to see what that password was. So again, we're going to choose Chris Crawford. We're going to change, we're going to see what his password is for the environmental health. Password working is my password. Sure enough, we just changed it. So there it is. Okay, so this is where you would manage, look up, and change passwords for the employee workbooks, right? If you recall from videos 2 and 3, those passwords are important. And here's where you would look them up, and here's where you would change them. So let's show the hidden columns, okay? I don't want you necessarily working this way, but there may be occasions where for whatever reason you need to look at the raw data. So you're going to click this checkbox, and there they are. Okay, you can see Chris Crawford. We just changed the password for Chris Crawford working in environmental health. We changed it to my password. We also just changed the environmental health password to ENV Health 1. Now, if for whatever reason you didn't use, now you can imagine, okay, there's only 4 people here. You know, there's, I don't know, close to 100 employees in the health department. Over time, with, personnel changes or what have you, you may have a list here of, I don't know, 170 odd people, right? And they're all going to be different, but you'll have the passwords for the programs here, and those are going to correspond to column B, and then the individual staff passwords will correspond to A. If you had to, for whatever reason, open up the raw data and change it, you could, right? I just changed that back, and I'm going to change this back, and it'll register. That's fine, and then you can, click on that, and you will see if I look up the management password for environmental health now, it's going to be back to password. And sure enough, there it is, right? I'm not going to bother. Well, we'll do Chris Crawford in environmental health just to show you that it, is back to what it originally was. And there it is. Okay. So, this is where you manage passwords. We're going to hide this sheet. Now we're back to the original welcome tab. All right. We've actually covered everything here except this last one. Okay. And why is this last one in red? Don't screw around with this unless you know what you're doing. Okay. The values that you're going to see here are used for a variety of lookups and drop down menus through the program. If you change these things, there's going to need to be changes in the code, okay, into the program. So somebody's going to kind of need to know what they're doing if these things get changed. That being said, I wanted to provide the interface for it. There may be times when you need to do it, okay, but if you're going to do things here, make sure you have somebody who knows a little bit about VBA and understands the system before you make changes here. So we're going to go ahead and click on it. And here comes the warning, right? Modifying data on this workbook will result in the need for application updating. Data on this sheet should not be modified unless you know what you are doing. Simply modifying these data without updating the application will result in the application not working. Last warning, do not modify unless you know what you are doing. Self-explanatory. Okay, let's move this out of the way. I am showing you this, and these are essentially a lot of the drop-down menus. You can see, here are the counties categories for, their performance standards. Here are the competency ratings. Here are the ratings for the different trainings. Okay. Here is the list of here is the list of civil service titles. Okay, and you can see lifeguard was recently added. Okay, all of these things this is only gonna make sense to somebody who knows a little bit about Excel. All of these things are named lists, and I'll show you that in a second. Here's the categories for the employee satisfaction survey. Here are the different divisions and programs as I broke them out. Okay, that's really it actually. But here's the short version of this. The short version of the competency ratings. I'm sure we use 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 somewhere. Can't think of it off the top of my head, but don't mess with it. Here is yes, partially, and no. If you recall, this is part of the training, whether you finish the training or not. So these are essentially all lists that populate drop downs. Okay. And if you change these lists, you're going to need to change the program. Okay. Because the program requires functions off a lot of these values. Okay. So don't touch this unless you know what you're doing. But I did want to show you that it's there. We're going to go back to the welcome tab. Okay. So that's it. That is where you enter reference data. Okay. When you're done using this tab, close the PES references workbook. And now we're back to the original portal of entry. And if you recall from the start of this video, we accessed things here and we needed the administrative password. And so we're just going to close up. And that is the end of our training series. So with if you go through all 5 training episodes, you should have a good sense for all this works. It's real important to understand. I showed you the nuts and bolts of how the application works. But that application is structured to meet accreditation requirements and to meet county standards. Okay. And understanding all of that means you need to understand workforce development. And if you recall from the first video, I reference you to, actually, we'll bring it up. I reference you to this video here on YouTube called FAB Workforce Development Training. So the concepts that form the basis for that application are presented here. Okay. So that if you're a manager, you definitely need to watch this one. Okay, it's important. If you're an employee, maybe not, but if you're on the workforce development team, absolutely. Anyway, thank you for watching the series. It can be accessed on this channel. You can always just go to YouTube and look for it. Go to playlists, and here it is, the CCHD Performance Evaluation Training Series. Okay, and you can view that playlist here. Actually, this last video isn't up yet. There's only the first 4, but it'll be up in the next hour or so. You'll see it. And all 5 videos will be listed here. So thank you for watching the training videos. I appreciate it. And hopefully this will go a long way for our department in meeting our accreditation standards. Thanks a lot again.